And we are recording as well.
Welcome, everyone. We're going to take a few minutes to let folks in, and we'll get started.
Hola a todos, vamos a esperar unos minutos para que entren más personas a la reunión.
I'm just going to wait one more minute and then get started.
Vamos a esperar un minuto más y empezamos.
Hi, good afternoon. I think it's now afternoon, everyone. My name is Jolene Price. I'm an attorney in the Energy Unit, Community Legal Services.
Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Jolene Price y soy abogada aquí en los servicios comunitarios legales.
Hi, my name is Rebecca McCord and I'm a paralegal in the Energy Unit at Community Legal Services.
Mi nombre es Rebecca McCord. Hola a todos. Trabajo también para la unidad de energía en los servicios comunitarios y soy paralegal.
And we've started the Spanish and English interpretation. So if you need Spanish interpretation, just click the globe icon at the bottom of the screen to join. Ms. Nixon, I can't hear you.
I believe that's because you started the interpretation, Cassidy.
I'm sorry about that. Si alguien necesita interpretación en español, puede hacer clic en el globe icon, el círculo con líneas, y este va a comenzar la interpretación en español. Lo siento.
So thank you, Cassidy, and everyone, welcome everyone. We're gonna spend the next half hour, 45 minutes talking about kind of an overview on affordable utility service in Philadelphia, and then we'll have some time for question and answer. So just an overview of CLS's energy unit. We are one unit within the larger organization of Community Legal Services, which provides civil legal services to low-income Philadelphians. And our unit focuses on access to safe, affordable water, electric, and home heating services. And we do that in a number of ways, including through direct representation of individuals and groups and through systemic advocacy. Today, we're just going to give a quick overview on where we are in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania on utility shutoffs. And then we're going to do some overview of preventing termination of service, what to do when you get a shutoff notice. And then some detailed information about grant assistance that's available for utilities. So where are we? So the first and most important thing that everyone should know is that PECO and PGW currently have no prohibition against shutting off service. They're the COVID-related ban on shutoffs that applied to PECO and PGW ended March 31st, and they were allowed to begin gas and electric shutoffs April 1st. That doesn't mean they've actually started terminating yet, but there's no longer any legal prohibition for them to do so. So you may start seeing shutoff notices come out and people getting terminated. In the meantime, the water department, the Philadelphia Water Department, has extended its ban on shutoffs through next April of 2022. So there will be no water shutoffs for unpaid bills until April of 2022. That said, late payment penalties and referrals to collection agencies will start in May for anyone who's not enrolled in the low-income programs or the senior citizen discount at the water department. So we'll later this month in this series be doing a whole webinar on water issues. So I encourage you, if you're interested in water issues, to join us for that webinar. This webinar is going to focus on PECO and PGW shutoffs and grant assistance. And just a refresher, since it's been a little bit since utilities have been permitted to terminate customers, there are some legal requirements that they have to follow before they can shut off a customer for non-payment of bills. First is that you have to get a 10-day written notice. A written notice sent 10 days before you are, they can actually terminate you, to give you a warning. And those, just to note, those notices are valid for up to 60 days. So there's a 50-day period after that 10-day from the time of sending the notice expires. They have 50 days to act on the notice, the utility. So even if it says, you know, you'll get shut off on April 30th, if the April 30th comes and goes and you're not shut off, they still have time after that to potentially shut you off. Utilities are also supposed to attempt to contact you either by phone, electronic means if you've consented in the past, or in person 3 days prior to shut off. Just to note that that's a requirement of attempt to contact and not actual contact. So if they call and leave a voicemail or get a busy signal, that can count as an attempt to contact. They're also supposed to knock on the door prior to shut off. Again, that would only be helpful if you are present at that time. And just a note, just so everyone knows, that utilities are only authorized to terminate Monday through Thursday. So if it's Friday or a weekend, they are not allowed to terminate those days. I'm going to pass it to Becca to talk a little bit about some options to prevent shutoff.
Yes, so I'm going to go through each of the following options available to help you manage your bills or avoid shutoff. First will be enrolling in low-income assistance programs, then grant assistance options, and then we'll go through the different payment agreement options, and then we'll go through some tenants' rights, and then medical certificates, and then the dispute processes. And all of the information we touch on is available on our website, which is clsphila.org/utilities. And there's a lot of useful flyers and stuff like that that you can keep or share with whoever. You can go. Thank you. Okay, so the first, enrolling in low-income assistance programs. So enrolling in PECO's CAP program or PGW's CRP program will prevent a shutoff. These programs, I'll talk about them a little bit more in detail, but they are discounted bills based on a percentage of your income. And these are programs available to low-income customers. And just to note that if the customer has been on these programs before, but they fell off payments or they were removed for another reason, there's still a potential cure amount or the amount that you need to pay in order to get back on the program. So if you believe you would be eligible and you work previously on the program, you can ask the utility for the cure amount that needs to be paid or covered through grant assistance in order to get back on the program. And we'll touch more on these options in the future webinars that we have on PECO and PGW. So some more information. So PECO's program is called the Customer Assistance Program, or CAP, and it is based on a fixed credit, which is calculated based on your income, household size, and usage. And once you're on the program, as long as you make your monthly payments, you get forgiveness over the amount that you owed before you were put onto the CAP program. So if you had an $1,000 balance and then you enrolled in CAP, that all gets set aside. And every month that you pay your current CAP bill, you'll get 1/12 of $1,000 forgiven. And then for PGW, the program is the Customer Responsibility Program, or CRP. And that works a little bit differently. It's an income-based bill. So the bill is a percentage of your income between 4% and 6%, or you would receive a minimum bill of $25. Or if the average bill is less than what a percentage of income bill would be, then you would receive an average of the past 12 months bills per month. And just like PECO, they have the debt forgiveness program. So once you're put in CRP, you will get forgiveness over 36 months of the amount that you owed previously. And again, we'll talk more about these programs in our future webinars, but you can apply for these programs online, by mail, or at a neighborhood energy center. Usually the offices for PICO and PGW would be open and you could apply there, but they're currently closed. If you or someone you know applies for these programs and gets denied, that's something you can come to us about. We do see issues, particularly with the online applications, where people didn't know or couldn't figure out how to provide the information that they needed. And one thing you'll need is proof of income for everyone in the household. If you apply, you don't need to provide a social security number, but there might be some sort of issue with the online program for that. So if there's an issue with that, just contact CLS's energy unit. And these are the income guidelines. So PICO's CAP and PGW's CRP are both low income programs for customers with household incomes under 150% of the federal poverty level. And so you can see here, this is a pre-tax income amount. So for a household of one, that's $1,610 per month. For a household of four, that's $3,312 per month. And if there is no income in the household, you can still enroll in the program. You just need to make sure you ask them for a no income form when you apply. So we're going to go into the grant assistance options in more detail, but there are currently 3 or 4 options for grant assistance, which can give you a cash amount towards your utility bill. So there's LIHEAP, there's LIHEAP Cash and Crisis, there's the Utility Emergency Services Fund, and then there's the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, which is not just for rental assistance, but also for utility assistance. Okay, so to talk about payment arrangements, a payment arrangement or a PAR is an agreement to pay off your utility debt over a period of time. One thing to note is if you agree to a payment arrangement, that means that you're agreeing that you are responsible for that amount of money towards the utility company. But if you don't think that you should be held responsible and you have an issue with that amount, then you don't want to put that amount on a payment arrangement. You also don't want to agree to a payment arrangement that you can't afford, because the utility can use that against you in future negotiations, and they can also deny you future payment arrangements. So the utilities can issue payment arrangements. They have the ability to offer you as many payment arrangements as they want for as long as they want. So right now, with the moratorium on shutoffs being lifted so people can get shut off again, one of the protections that they put in place were longer payment arrangements for people who fall within the following guideline income limits. So if the utility customer's household is under 250% of the federal poverty level, then the utility is supposed to offer the customer a 60-month or 5-year payment arrangement on the amount that they owe. And this would protect them from shutoff if they receive a shutoff notice. If you're between 250 and 300% of the federal poverty level, then there's an option for a 24-month or 2-year payment arrangement. And then above that, you can get a 1-year payment arrangement. If the customer is not satisfied with that offer, you can request a longer or a shorter payment arrangement from the utility. So if they don't offer you what you think you can actually afford, then try to negotiate for a better arrangement. And then if the utility won't give you a payment arrangement, there is still what's called a PUC, or Public Utility Commission issued payment arrangement. So the Public Utility Commission oversees the utilities, and they are able to give any utility customer one payment arrangement for current customers, or to restore service that's been shut off. They generally only issue one payment arrangement. So this is sort of the last resort as far as payment arrangements go. And just a note that if you're on CAP, you can't get a payment arrangement for the debt that accrued while you were on the program. But you can, like I said earlier, ask for what's called the cure amount to get reinstated in the CAP program. And then it would all go into the CAP arrears.
So I'm going to take over here and talk a little bit about some other shutoff protections. Thank you, Becca, for covering all that. We'll hear more from Becca later. I just wanted to highlight that there are some special protections that intersect with shutoffs and just in general for survivors of domestic violence. To qualify for the protections, you have to have either a protection from abuse order or, and I quoted the language of the statute here, which is complicated because we don't really have a good, better summary, but essentially any court order issued in Pennsylvania that provides evidence of domestic violence. So something like bail conditions, or if something is listed in a custody order about domestic violence, that may be used in lieu of a PFA with the utility. You do have to provide the utility with a copy of the relevant order so that they can make a note in their system that you should be getting these protections. And what does it get you? The normal sort of standard rule around utility debts is that if you lived in the property and your name was on the lease or the mortgage or the deed, that you can be held responsible for that debt even if you were not the name on the bill. So even if the PICO bill is in your roommate's name, if you're both on the lease, you can both be held liable for that debt. Domestic violence survivors can only be held, can only be required to pay debt that was actually in their name. So that can be a real help when trying to prevent shutoff or start service. Domestic violence survivors are also entitled to an additional notice of termination. They have to post a notice at the property 48 hours prior to actual termination, rather than just attempting to contact the customer. And that you are entitled to flexible payment arrangement terms based on specific facts and circumstances in your specific case, from the utility and from the PUC, which is different than the payment arrangements that Becca just went over, which are all very formulaic based on, this many months, your debt over this many months. So that's something to keep in mind for survivors of domestic violence. Next, an option to postpone termination is using a medical certificate. A medical certificate is a signed document or form from a medical provider, like a doctor, a nurse practitioner, or a physician's assistant, that says that either someone in the household has a serious illness, or someone in the household has a medical condition that could be worsened by utility shutoff. And what it gets you is a 30-day postponement, essentially, on termination. So some examples of what those medical conditions could be that could be worsened by utility shutoff: asthma that requires air conditioning, diabetes that requires refrigeration for medication. I mean, it's up to the medical professional to sort of decide whether you, as their patient, have a condition that qualifies. Customers can submit a new certificate every 30 days if they pay all of their current charges. So if you get a medical certificate and pay the amount that for the electricity or gas that you use that month, you can get another medical certificate for another 30 days. And you can do that indefinitely, 30 days at a time, as long as you keep paying that current month's bill while under the medical certificate. If you don't pay your current charges, you can renew up to 2 times. So you can get up to 90 days of protection. Because the protection for medical certificates is somewhat limited, the 30 days, and even if you keep paying your current charges, you have to submit the 30 days, every 30 days. We always recommend that customers pursue other options, like the low-income assistance program, grants, payment arrangements, before requesting medical certificates. But we're always happy to help troubleshoot if someone's having difficulty with medical certificates. Wanted to do a quick overview of the dispute process for PICO and PGW. So one thing that we try to reiterate a lot is that as a utility customer, you actually have some rights, and there are legal standards that govern how and when the utility can shut off your service, whether you're eligible for low-income programs, how they bill you, what payment arrangements they offer you when they accept or refuse a medical certificate. So just remember that you do have rights with the utility. Always attempt to negotiate with the utility before going to the Public Utility Commission. That's a requirement before you can file a complaint with the Public Utility Commission. And if you're unhappy with the utility's decision, you can actually request a copy of their report on the matter and use that to file a complaint. But you don't have to have a copy of that report to file a complaint. There's 2 types of complaints you can file with the Public Utility Commission. The first is an informal complaint, which is a pretty simple process. You can call that number, 1-800-692-7380. That's the Bureau of Consumer Services. Once you file that informal complaint, when you get through on that phone number, it will temporarily stop shutoff while the PUC investigates, as long as you file that informal complaint before the day of shutoff. There's also an option to file a formal complaint, which is a more formal, more akin to a court-like process with an administrative law judge. And you can either do that when you get a decision from the Bureau of Consumer Services and you're dissatisfied with the informal complaint decision. You can appeal and initiate a formal complaint. You can also go directly to a formal complaint, but there's no automatic stay on shutoff when you file a formal complaint, and it is a much more complicated and longer process. Wanted to briefly touch on tenants' rights under the law. If your landlord and not you as the utility customer, you as the tenant are entitled to notice of termination 30 days before termination. And just tip, if you don't get a notice, if someone comes to try and shut off and you haven't got a notice, you can contact the utility and demand a notice per the Discontinuance of Service to Lease Premises Act. And the notice should actually be posted at the property. It's not something that should that only arrive in the mail. You as a tenant have a right to continued service if you as a tenant or you as the tenants pay the previous 30 days bill, not the full balance owed by the landlord, but just the previous 30 days bill. And if you are if you pay the landlord for utilities or it's included in your rent, you can deduct, if it's included in your rent, you can deduct payments from rent owed. But I would recommend reaching out to us, someone in our housing unit, before taking that step, just to go through those options. Pass it to Becca to talk a little bit about LIHEAP and USIF.
Yes, thank you. So one of the grant options that we mentioned is LIHEAP. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this program. It was scheduled to close on April 9th, but they decided to extend the program through April 30th. And this is for the current winter season that started in December. There are two types of grants you can get through the LIHEAP program. You can get a cash grant, you can get a crisis grant. So a cash grant is available to customers who are within the same income limits as the low income cap programs. So 150% of the federal poverty limit. And the cash grant is a grant between $200 and $1,000 towards your gas, electric, or other deliverable fuel like oil. So, well, if it was oil, it would be an oil, like gallon of oil or whatever the amount would be. So this is available to customers even if they're current on bills. It's just an amount that gets sent to the utility towards your bills. The crisis grant is for past due bills. So you can receive a crisis grant if you have an amount of unpaid bills. Even if you don't have a shutoff notice, you can still receive a crisis grant if you have bills that are past due. So if you receive that grant, it can be an amount from $25 to $800. It's whatever the utility needs in order to resolve the past due amount or the shutoff threat. So if your service is off, you can also receive a crisis grant to restore service, or if you have less than 2 weeks of deliverable fuel like oil. Another part of the crisis option is what's called the interface program, which is the LIHEAP program will provide free repairs to your heating service. So if your heater is broken or there's some sort of issue with the fuel line, they can repair that in order to protect the heating that you need to heat your home, the heating service that you need. So if there's a broken heater, definitely inform LIHEAP in the application about that. So like I said, the income limit for this program is 150% of the federal poverty level. That's $19,320 for one person annually, or $39,700 for a family of 4. So this income can be calculated either from the previous 30 days or the past 12 months. So if you're, let's say someone lost their job 40 days ago. So now they really need this money, or this grant money for their utility bills. That person would want to apply using their current or their past 30 days of income. But if somebody recently got a job, but they have been without a job for 12 months, then their annual income is going to be more beneficial for the purposes of the LIHEAP grant, because it shows that they are more in need. So whatever is more beneficial to your application, you can use. And the grant can go to your main source of heat, but it can also go through your secondary source. So if, let's say you have PICO and PGW bills, you can get you know, a cash grant towards your PICO bill and then a crisis grant towards your gas bill. But you'd want to be strategic about that and make sure that you're applying the money, the greatest amount of money towards the utility that you need the most help with. Another note is that certain lawfully admitted non-citizens are eligible, regardless of when they arrived into the US. So there's no 5-year limit there. Just actually one thing I want to say about LIHEAP is that applying, if you apply and you're denied, you can appeal that denial. So if you believe you're eligible, but there was a problem with the application, you can appeal. So one thing is, if you don't have the ability to send your documents to LIHEAP or through the Compass portal, you can inform the utility verbally over the phone. I'm sorry, not the utility. You can inform LIHEAP verbally that you can tell them your income, and they are supposed to accept it verbally due to the coronavirus pandemic. So just to go to the next form of grant assistance. So the USEF grants are Utility Emergency Services Fund grants. This is a program that is available for customers who are at or below 175% of the federal poverty level. So that's $22.5K for a family of 1, or $46K for a family of 4. These grants are a little different, so they will give you a grant if that amount will resolve the total balance or will satisfy the PGW CRP cure amount. So the total grants can range between, for water, up to $3,000, for gas up to $1,500, and then electric, it can range between $500 and $1,000. So like I said, if you were a gas customer and you were on CRP in the past, but you fell off and you have a total balance of $3,000, but your CRP cure amount is only $1,300, you would want to tell USEF that you need a gas grant for the CRP cure amount so that you can get back on the program and they can give you their grant, because they won't give you any money unless it will totally resolve the issue. In order to apply, you can contact the USEF, or you can contact their neighborhood energy center locations, which are the following are operating in person by appointment. So you can take down these numbers and call them for an appointment and ask them what you'll need to bring. You'll need, your ID, a form of identification, social security number, utility bills, proof of income. So you can call USEF directly. There's the Hunting Park NAC, there's United Communities, there's ASE, there's We Never Say Never, and there's Congreso de Latinos Unidos. And ASE and Congreso both provide services in English or Spanish. And now Jolene will tell you a little bit more about ERAP.
Yeah, thank you, Becca. So this is the newest program that can help with utility bills. And hopefully you've heard some, since it just launched in Philadelphia this week. It's called the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, which is kind of a misnomer because it's actually the Emergency Rental and Utility Assistance Program. It's being run in Philadelphia by PHDC. The website is phlrentassist.org. It is part of the money is for this round of funding is coming from an allocation from December from the federal government. Philadelphia got close to $100 million. So there's a lot of money in this program. Really encourage people to apply. You can get grants in addition to, I'm not going to cover the rental assistance grants. That's not my area of expertise. But for utilities, if you can only get these grants if you're a tenant, if you pay rent at a residential property, you can get grants for utility debt that accrued anytime on or after March 13th, 2020, so the start of the pandemic. You can get grants to cover past due balances and your current month bill, which I think is important because so if you're not behind on your utilities, but you are behind on rent or in some other way can show that you have some housing instability, you may still be able to get some money towards your current utility bill. The grants can be used for PECO, PGW, or the water department. They go directly to the utility company, and the PHL Rent Assist right now is saying you can get up to $2,000 for each utility. So it is a fair amount of assistance. If you are, as a tenant, pay your landlord for bills that are in the landlord's name, you can get assistance for that, but that goes that's considered rent and would go towards your rental assistance in the per month maximum. So just a note that these grants are the utility assistance grants are if the bill is in your name. The eligibility. So the first thing I wanted to really highlight is that the income limits are higher than most other utility assistance programs. It's tenants who have income at or below 80% of area median income. That's $54,000 a year for one person, $77,000 a year for a family of four. So it's really much higher than the numbers we're used to working with in the utility assistance space. So more people are going to be eligible. And you can show income eligibility in a couple different ways, either using your actual gross 2020 income, your monthly income at the time of the application, or you can show your what's called categorically eligible if you are enrolled in a program that it has an income limit below 80% of area median income. So that would be something like food stamps or medical assistance, likely also like LIHEAP. You also have to show that you have incurred financial hardship due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which can be you qualify for employment benefits, you've experienced reductions in household income, you've incurred additional costs, and I'll go over this a little bit in the next slide, or some other financial hardship. And then third, you have to demonstrate that you have a risk of homelessness or housing instability. And two of the ways you can do this is through showing past due rent or past due utility bills. So if you're behind on your utility bills, that'll meet this this prong of the eligibility, this category. You can also show that if you pay, depending on how much you pay for your utilities and rent combined, you may also just be able to show a risk of housing instability based on paying more than, I think it's a third of your income to utilities and housing. This is just a quick chart, and we'll send around the slides, but just so you know what 80% of AMI looks like, and there is a provision that priority review for application should go to households at a slightly lower income at 50% of AMI. So how to apply? There's two ways to apply to my understanding, and I just want to note this is a new program. It's being run. It has a lot of new guidelines for this phase, what's being considered phase 4 of rental assistance. It's because it's federal government money coming through the state. There are some differences with previous rounds of rental assistance, and there's some different guidelines. So we're all still getting used to what it is, and if you encounter difficulties, feel free to reach out to us or reach out to the PhDC and just try to figure out and navigate what's going on. You can apply online. There's a online application at phlrentassist.org. If you don't have access to the internet or need language services or have any questions, you can call 311 and they will assist you with going through the process. Couple tips. There's not an automatic, we're not really sure if, how, and when the utility gets notified that you've applied for one of these grants. And so if you are facing shutoff, but are still in the process of getting one of these grants or have applied, you probably need to take the step of calling the utility and telling them, hey, I applied for the emergency rental assistance. I haven't heard back yet. Can you delay my termination while the application is pending? You do not need to be behind in rent to qualify for assistance with utilities. If you are behind in utilities, that qualifies you for assistance. So just note that even if you're current on your rent, if you are past due on your utilities, that can be enough to qualify you for these grants. We think that there's a pretty good argument that any increased utility usage during the pandemic should prove that the household incurred substantial costs due to the pandemic, and that we've seen, I think, nationwide, an increase in residential utility usage. We're spending more time at home. We're using our sinks more. We're cooking at home more. Our kids are using the internet to connect to virtual school. Those things are going to be increasing our utility costs, and that should be something that can show that you've incurred some costs due to the pandemic. The other thing is that if you've agreed to a payment arrangement with a utility, you should still be able to get a grant to cover that amount, because you didn't get any assistance with it. You just agreed to pay it back over time. And so that assistance you should be able to get assistance for payment arrangements with the utility, as long as they can determine which amounts were accrued after March 13th, 2020. And just a sort of practice tip to take a photo of your application and make note of the date of the application, just to have proof that you applied, both if you have problems with getting any sort of answer from the grant from PHDC, or more likely to show the utility that you've applied. And I want to note also that there is, if you do get denied benefits, there is a right to appeal. And if you have any questions about that, you should feel free to reach out to us. So just to sort of wrap up, if you need help from CLS's energy unit, or you have clients who are, you're working with folks who might need help from our unit, we're doing intake by phone right now. You can call that number 215-981-3700, leave a message, and someone will call you back to do an intake. And we do you don't have to have a shutoff notice to get assistance from our unit at the moment, and we can do advice on affording your bills. If you've been denied or are struggling to apply for the customer assistance programs we talked about, you can reach out to us. If you do have a shutoff notice and don't know what to do next, feel free to reach out to us. Issues with medical certificates, issues with the Tenants Rights to Utility Service, please feel free to reach out. And as Becca mentioned, we do have a lot of information on our website, clsphila.org/utilities/shutoffs starting. And we do have information in both English and Spanish. And finally, just a thank you. This is our contact information for Becca and myself, and I also put in the email for all of the attorneys in the energy unit, energy lawyers at clsphila.org. Feel free to reach out to us with questions or concerns, or is a referral appropriate? Is this a case that we should send over? All of those things we're happy to hear from you about. And so if you have any questions right now, we're happy to answer them.
And feel free to put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A.
I see one in the Q&A that I'm just going to read. that regarding communication from a utility of an impending shutoff, what provisions are there for people with communication difficulties, such as low literacy, limited English, etc., and how effective are the 3-day attempts at contact? There is, for low literacy, I don't know there's anything. Unfortunately, I don't have a good answer on that. I think we work in our advocacy to try and get the utilities and to get the PUC to require the utilities to make those shutoff notices as clear as possible. The envelopes usually make clear that it contains a shutoff notice, but I don't have a great answer. It should, if the utility has, at least for Spanish speakers, if they have in their system that it is a Spanish speaking household, they should get a notice in that language. If you see issues with that, we would love to know about it because we don't know how well that is working. And so please, if you are working with people where the utility has been told, or you've told the utility that you would like communications in a language other than English and you're not getting them, please let us know. And how effective are these 3-day contacts? It's a mixed bag, and I do not have lots of confidence in them getting through. But often because they'll try a number that someone gave 3 years ago when they signed up for service, and maybe they don't have that phone number anymore, or maybe they're not checking their voicemails. Maybe they don't want to answer a call from PICO because they're afraid it's a collections call. There's all sorts of reasons that it might not work. In our advocacy, we have consistently tried to push for stronger protections like the posting at the property, those sorts of notices. And so we are trying. We have not been successful in recent years, and if anyone is interested in working with us on that, we are definitely happy to talk about it. And then I see another question, and Becca, I'm going to throw it to you. Will the payment program with the utility companies be based off of gross income or net?
I'm assuming you mean the low income programs, like CAP. And
I think the answer is the same if it's low income programs or the payment agreements.
Yeah. So it can be based on either.
No, it's based on gross income, isn't it?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking past 12 months versus. Yes,
I
gross.
know that.
Yeah, so pre-tax.
Yeah, it's always gross income, unfortunately, because that's frustrating when people get a lot taken out off the top.
We've had a couple questions about if we'll be sharing the PowerPoint, and the answer is yes, I'll send out a copy. If you don't get it for some reason, I'll put my email in the chat and you can just send me an email about that. And then we received another question that says, will you work with advocates for older adults that are not able to call or communicate independently?
We can, it depends on the circumstance. So feel free to reach out to us, email us and ask, and we can work through that with you. We may be able to give you some advice just without opening a case, depending, or if we need to open a case, there may be ways that we can figure out how to get you, how to work with you. I see a note about 311 constantly referring customers to PCA on this subject, and noting that the PCA emergency fund only covers $100. Yeah, that's, I'm hopeful. So what we've been told is that the 311 are the folks who can help with, who are now going to be able to help with the emergency rental assistance program. But if you see problems or you see issues with that working as a process, or you hear of folks getting referred not to the rental assistance program when they call 311, please let us know. Like I said, that this is a new program. It's this calling of 311, I think, is new. especially given that this is new for utility assistance this round. So it should work, but I don't work for the city, so I can't promise that. Couple more questions. Wow, guys, awesome. Have either PICO or PGW sent out shutoff notices yet? To our knowledge, I have seen PGW shutoff notices. I have not seen PICO shutoff notices. So based on my current, as of, understanding, which may be incorrect as of today, but based on what we've seen PGW shutoff notices, but not PICO shutoff notices. Just a quick note on this question, is it possible we can do this session at night for those who can't attend during the day? If you are with an organization or you want to, we can talk about doing this again, absolutely. But we are also recording this and we'll put it up on our social media, hopefully at least. And so if, and definitely feel free to reach out to us if you don't see a recording. But we are recording this and can provide it to folks who want it, who want it. And then this question about the digital divide, I agree. It's are customers without a computer, smartphone, internet services at a disadvantage in this process? And I assume that's in reference to the rental assistance program, but it's true, I think, across all of the assistance programs. How are those customers being helped? So with the emergency rental assistance program, my understanding is that those customers can call 311 and get assistance with their application. That is my understanding as of right now. If with some of the other, we have pushed PICO and PGW to accept verbal verification of information over the phone, to accept applications over the phone for their programs. They have resisted, and we have not been successful in having them be required to do so. They are supposed to be flexible with their income documentation requirements under PUC orders, but the PUC left that somewhat vague and not specific to phone. I think I'm generally concerned about how those customers are being helped, and I think that it's a big problem right now, especially in COVID, where not all, like as Becca mentioned, there are not the customer service centers for the utilities are closed. They're not open to the public. You can't walk into a customer service center for PGW and get help with your CRP application or submit your CRP application. So I don't have a good answer, but that's my answer. I think I caught all the questions. Becca, Cassidy, let me know if I missed any.
Those are all the questions that I saw. Does anybody else have any questions that they'd like to ask? I apologize if my audio is off.
And again, our emails are at the end of this presentation. Cassidy's going to circulate the presentation. Please, if you think of any questions or anything comes up, please feel free to reach out to us. And we can see what we can do to help or help navigate all of this. Thank you all.
Right. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys.